Yeah! Oh! Welcome all of you back to another Chris Chan Quickie article, where tonight we're reading, and this is Chris's imaginary friends. Well, I hope you like them, Chris, because they are the only friends you are going to have left. True story, and if you don't believe me, well, wait until you see what he's got, because even the people he keeps don't want to even be his friends. How does that work? I don't know, but we're gonna find out. He sees them with his third eye, but longs to see them in real life. An idea guy on Chris's perception of his imaginary friends. Imaginary friends are psychological manifestations typically employed by toddlers to practice social skills. Most children grow out of the phase. Chris, on the other hand, retained his belief in imaginary friends well into adulthood, still holding the belief at 42 years of age. Chris has always had difficulties distinguishing fiction from reality due to his autism. His imaginary friends were originally an occasional source of companionship, as well as a coping mechanism for moments of stress, such as the infamous example of invoking solitude to Mary Lee Walsh during his college days. As he entered his mid-30s, Chris retreated more often to his imaginary world as a reaction to the downward spiral of his life, ignoring the real-world problems of his debt and lack of independent living experience, resulting in a vicious feedback loop in which Chris's real-world problems worsen while his devotion to his imaginary friends increases. The machinations of the idea guys and the enablers that followed, whose chief tactic is role-playing as Chris's imaginary friends, further cemented the belief into Chris's mind. Chris's devotion to his imaginary friends outweighed his real-life friendships with his Pokemon League friends, and he gradually lost contact with the latter to focus on his fantasy world. How Chris interacts with his imaginary friends. Yeah, no word of a lie. I'll tell you something, like, to be honest, and I'll just, again, we're gonna pause just for a quick moment, is that Chris is not even the craziest person I've ever known. I think, to be honest, somebody in Chris's scenario, I think where, Chris is, like, shit out of luck when it comes to, actual friendships and stuff like that, so it only seems more natural that he could create friends that will like him because of who he is, because we know who Chris is, and yeah, that creates a healthy dose of problems. But earlier today, like, no joke, I was literally on my way home because I was doing, like, piecework at my job and stuff like that, and literally coming past, like, Eldon Square, there was, like, a black woman with like, her shirt off, and she had, like, no bra on, and she was, like, on her knees, like, screaming something in gibberish. It literally, and she, like, in front of, like, that small little zebra crossing where the buses come past and stuff like that. Anyway, she was hollering some gibberish, then she literally crawls forward, lies flat on the road, and people either tell her to shut the fuck up, or they literally try to get, like, Eldon Square staff in just to get her to stand up and actually, put a damn shirt back on. But I'm telling you now, I don't know what on earth was going on in her mind and all that, but I must say, Chris has never gone off the edge enough to do stuff like that. And considering we know more about Chris, I can only imagine that whatever that woman was going through, it must have been past imagining compared to whatever the hell problems we know of Chris, which suggests that I think Chris has more of a cognitive grasp on the ideas that, for the most part, he keeps his ideas to himself outside of those who want to play into his delusions, which, they may be delusionary to us, but they're probably not to Chris, if that makes sense. Chris is confused over the concept of imagination, interpreting it as visions into the dimension where his friends reside. In a 2010 email to Jackie, Chris said that he communicated with imaginary friends before falling asleep, essentially describing a form of daydreaming. I do still sometimes talk with my electric hedgehog Pokemons while I'm on my way to falling asleep and the TV is off. We talk about current things, like things I could do or say in meeting new people, or just things I'm feeling currently to get their response to. Chris in the Jackie emails. So this is like a sort of thing that goes as far back as 2010, probably even further back still, when the internet was discovering Chris, and Chris was still quite unhinged back in the day. Chris tapped into New Age spirituality to try strengthening his perceived ties to the other dimension, with techniques centered around meditation. In the summer of 2017, he began referring to a third eye, a concept associated with mental visions and precognition. He also experimented with astral projection, a term for an outer-body experience achieved with meditation, as a method to access Quickfill, and later Dimension C197. In the fall of 2017, the first of the idea guys entered the picture, role-playing as Chris's own imaginary friends, initially to see if he was gullible enough to believe it. From Chris's perspective, he thought that he was addressing his friends over the internet instead of having an astral project. This validated Chris's beliefs, because that didn't take much to convince him, and his faith in imaginary friends consequently escalated to the forefront of his life. I pretended to be Sonichu and Rosechu, who borrowed my computer. All it took was a little knowledge on Sonichu, and Chris believes he's talking to his children. The ringleader of the idea guys. So, was this either Joshua Moon or the other dude? Anyway. After the idea guys were ousted due to using their influence to extort Chris, various enablers crawled out of the woodwork and copied their techniques, keeping Chris firmly rooted in his fantasy land. As to why, it could only be assumed the only reason why they would even want to do this was just for Chris to be entertaining, and so he can make an absolute ass out of himself for shits and giggles, but like back in the old days. Except things have escalated and are a lot more sinister because of certain events which we'll get to. Chris has tried to physically interact with fictional characters. During BronyCon of 2017, an inconspicuous observer recorded him dancing with Magi Chan, in reality having thin air as his dance partner. In January 2019, Chris claimed on Twitter to have been attacked by an imaginary enemy while in the shower, and that he was able to whack the attacker with a half-full conditioner bottle. Whether that actually happened, I have no idea. In April 2019, Chris was spotted by a fan at Target muttering really loudly. From Chris's perspective, he had been hanging out with his imaginary friends. Chris also believes in spirit possession, involving his imaginary friends, such as when he believed that Hyperdimension Neptunia character Uzume and his OC Magi Chan had possessed his body. Accounts of said manifestations. Sonichu. During a 2004 confrontation with Mary Lee Walsh, Chris began to converse with thin air, pretending that Sonichu was in the office with him. Chris then pretended to be Sonichu, giving a speech that he claimed Sonichu wanted to give Walsh, before ending the lecture with a Kamehameha, since he believes he has magic powers. Unsurprisingly, Mary ordered him to see a psychiatrist. No, you know what, forget a psychiatrist. I would have suggested the only thing Chris needed was a good hiding. That would get him to keep quiet about this stuff. Chris has also conversed with Sonichu and Rosechu before falling asleep. At one point, he claimed that the pair offered him relationship advice. And surprise to absolutely nobody, they must have given really shitty advice, because guess what? It hasn't manifested anything. All it's done is manifested in humiliation, degradation, and 2 years in prison. Magi L Skunk. He claimed to have conversed with Magi L Skunk, particularly regarding how she has allegedly told him that she, Megan, but now by extension Magagi, should never have been born. Nightstar. Chris believes that he has overheard conversations held by Nightstar and other random My Little Pony characters. In 2017, Chris also used his Nightstar account on Twitter to talk to himself, even after revealing that Nightstar was a sock puppet of his. Magi Chan. The prime member of Chris's imaginary friends, having surpassed Sonichu and Nightstar in importance to Chris, as Magi Chan's abilities center around psychic powers, which Chris deems useful in his misguided attempts to correct his real-world problems. Magi Chan's rise in status began around the summer of 2017, when Chris believed Magi Chan was with him at BronyCon, to the point that he danced with thin air at the BronyCon gala, believing his dance partner was Magi Chan. Cuckoo. Magi Chan's importance to Chris has made him a key for others to use in manipulating him. The idea guys duped Chris into believing he was married to Magi Chan. The captain invoked Magi Chan to convince Chris to trust him to stop the idea guys. Jacob Socrates deceived Chris with a faked chat log involving Magi Chan, and various enablers have used Magi Chan to get their foot in the door with Chris. Discord. To do that, we're going to have to actually take a look at the full story about the My Little Pony Friendship is Magic Discord. They should just call it Friendship is Dead, because everything is dead when it comes to Chris. Innocence, dead. The truth, dead. Feelings of dead. All of it. Trying to meet Neptune at GameStop. An idea guy told Chris that fictional hyperdimension Neptunia character Neptune would be waiting for him at a GameStop during December 2017. Chris opted to go to the Forest Lakes location from which he had been banned, and on his own initiative stood outside and thoroughly scanned the interior looking for Neptune, then followed up by honking on his car horn and shouting her name. Now, once again, because there is no real footage or evidence, we have no idea if Chris really did this, but there you are. In fact, actually, to be honest, maybe Chris did do this, because the more I'm thinking about it, what does Chris have to gain exactly by suggesting that all of this is real? I know, but and that's the thing. The only thing Chris is trying to gain through all this is that he has people who actually like him. I think that's the only reason why he's even bothering to do this. Is it? I don't know, but what do you guys reckon? Polyamorous Marriage. During January of 2018, the idea guys rewrote Sonichu law so that Magi Chan and his father figure Mewtwo were married. 2 months later, they convinced Chris that he was married to Magi Chan and their OC Crizzle in a bisexual polyamorous marriage. As you do. The notion stuck with Chris, who declared his real-life love quest to be over. In June, long after the idea guys were ousted, Chris widened the marriage to officially include Mewtwo and Sylvana, Magi-chan's other partner. Chris has frequently mentioned his imaginary husbands and wives on social media, by posting messages written from their points of view, having Magi-chan deliver the news that Chris went to the hospital. He should have stayed there, if you ask me, but there you are. Claiming to be with them, stating that Sylvana helped him diagnose a problem with his car. Why could Sylvana do that? I didn't realise she was a mechanic now. Or referring to them as if they were real, saying his hubby too, Mewtwo, helped him out in the events from the Detective Pikachu movie. Hubby too, literally, I swear to God, I just want to fucking kill myself for hearing hubby too. I mean, guys, I've heard a lot of very cringy shit with Chris over these last couple of weeks, but hubby too? I mean, whatever. Religious figures. Chris has long believed that religious and spiritual figures like God and the Grim Reaper give him messages in the form of dreams, not realizing the dreams are merely expressions of his own subconscious desires. During the Idea Guy saga, an Idea Guy roleplayed as Jesus to troll Chris. As well as seen in the Crizzle torture chat log, validating Chris's egocentric beliefs that religious figures would seek to contact him. Well, I'll say this about the Idea Guys, Chris certainly needed Jesus. But apparently just Chris decided that he didn't need him as much as he thought he did. During the subsequent dimensional merge, Chris took his beliefs to the next level, believing that various deities were his imaginary friends helping with the merge. The CPUs who I am friends with, as well as God/Amuel and Jesus of this dimension. Distress over fictional characters. Chris uses his imaginary friends to find solidarity with changes to fictional media that he dislikes. The initial design of the Sonic the Hedgehog movie was disliked by Chris, who claimed to have discussed the matter with Sonic, whose opinion was that the movie does no good justice for him. When long-running cartoon My Little Pony Friendship is Magic wrapped up initial production, Chris was so upset and tried to convince Hasbro to continue the show, claiming to have consulted with Princess Celestia, a character from the cartoon. aka a fictional character. And things got so insane regarding this that Chris, earlier this year, was under the illusion through some falsely created accounts and reports that Hasbro was in cahoots with the Russians to make My Little Pony Generation 5. And Chris believed every single word of it. Because after 20 years now, probably even longer than that, Chris will only ever listen to things that he wants to hear. Things that will validate the bullshit that goes on in this world. And it doesn't surprise me, because this is the sort of thing that will go on until Chris is well into his 50s. Then again, with his condition and his health, is 50 even feasible for Chris? It probably is, but what will Chris even say when that happens? Coping with people who distance themselves. Chris has used the concept of imaginary friends to cope with people who explicitly don't want to put up with him. In January of 2019, several members of the Brony community blocked Chris's Twitter en masse. Chris tried to cope by role-playing an apology between his alter ego and the alter egos of the Bronies, in which the latter apologizes to Chris for blocking him, and then proceeded to take the roleplay seriously, sending the apology drawings out in a failed attempt to convince the Bronies to unblock him. In December of 2019, Chris threw a tantrum over Artist Project SNT's redesign of his Wild Sonichu character, later rationalizing his reaction as the result of Dimension CS-89 calling him for help. Chris tried to get Project SNT to respond to his power fantasy, but she refused to act as an enabler and ignored him. Thank you, SNT. Since she didn't want to interact with him, Chris appropriated her as an imaginary friend, declaring that she had been force-transported to Dimension CS-89 to assist him with battling interdimensional evil there. You know what? That was such a stupid thing I've just read. I almost feel like I need to, I don't know, I need to give... You know what? Guys, I'm going to just do a quick question down below. I've got an entire pound coin in my fingers right here. I will donate it to the very first charity people suggest down below, because I feel like, what the hell did I just read? Take your pick. I'll literally post it to the very first charity posted. MISC coping mechanisms. In June 2021, when Chris was about to leave the Watchmen Discord server, the place, and by extension cut ties with Megan, he stated to know that he first had to confirm Night V's safety and being from Megan. But I'm certain Knights and Reela have his back during uncertain moments, referring to an OC by Megan based on the character Knights from the Knights into Dreams video game. Okay, so miscellaneous. I to be honest, I didn't realize MK on Night V was even still, but I have no idea what he's talking about. Roberu. Initially, in the years after Chris's father passed away, Chris was in mourning over the loss, accepting that Bob was gone. However, the idea guys manipulated Chris into believing that Bob was alive in Quickfield's dimension, reincarnated as a Sonichu and going by the name Roberu. Chris tried to drag his mother into the fantasy of Bob being alive. How could you do that to somebody's own wife or widow? I don't get it, Chris. Having a pose for a photo next to a drawing of Roberu for a Twilight Sparkle Secret Shipfic folder card. In the card next, Chris claimed, "Every once in a while, Mr. C runs back home to offer comfort to Barbara. Before the dimension merges completion, she has missed him every day, and found the solace and comfort when he comes by. He continues to carry on a torch for her in his heart and soul while he helps to protect everyone in Quickville and at this old temple of a house." On video, Chris has interacted with his imaginary friends at BronyCon in the fall-winter 2019 with the TT squad while hanging out at a squad member's home. In 2019, Believe in This OCs and Deities, where Chris rambles about nothing and claims that Magi Chan is next to him. While pretending to be Sonichu, Chris signaled that Rosechu was sitting right next to him as he stated his will on camera. And in the February 2021 video, Chris kisses Rosechu, filmed by Prater, Chris, in this phase of role-playing as Sonichu, kisses an imaginary Rosechu. I don't think it's even worth showing you guys the video footage of any of this, because it essentially role-plays the idea that Chris's OCs are literally are possibly part John Cena as well, because I can't fucking see shit. And that, ladies and gentlemen, was the whole of Chris's imaginary friends. Basically, 20 whole minutes of trying to explain that the only reason why Chris, if these are the only friends that Chris has at all, he better make use with them, because, again, with somebody of Chris's track record, his history, his crimes, all the fucked up shit that he's done over his life, I'm almost surprised that, well, why? What? It's just about the only thing that Chris possibly has left. Sad, but true. And with all that being said and done, I hope all of you guys have enjoyed this article, and I cannot wait to see all of you guys again in the next video. Take care, and bye-bye for now.